of A New Destiny, a nonprofit organization celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, whose purpose is rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. He's a highly sought-after speaker at universities, organizations, and churches around the country, and is often invited on TV networks such as Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC for his insightful commentary. Character is the most important word in Reverend Peterson's vocabulary. Also, Reverend Peterson has chosen to go without his usual speaking fee for this event, as he wants to freely contribute his time to all of the tea parties and their mission around the country. However, to help him keep his doors open, he is accepting donations over at his booth over there. He's never asked for or received a dime from the government to retain his organization's integrity and independence, and also to show Black Americans that they can make it without government handouts.
That's right.
Please stop by his booth after hearing his speech.
Happy Independence Day. Thank you so much for having me here. I absolutely appreciate it. I host a radio show Monday through Friday, and I often open up my radio show by saying that I'm not an African American. I don't have an afro, I have an Amerifro. There are no African drums beating in my chest. The American guitar is playing in my heart. I am as black as the Ace of Spades, but 100% American. I want to quickly give you an example of what socialism looked like, and then I'm going to tell you about our Stop Obama Socialist Change campaign. 50 years ago or so, the government came in and it said to Black Americans that we are going to take care of you. You don't have to worry. Racism is a problem for you. We would take care of you. But you can't have a father in the home. You can't have a man in the home. And for whatever reason, Black Americans said okay to that. This was under Lyndon B. Johnson.
That's right.
And so they took the man out of the home for the most part, and the government became the daddy of the family. And the so-called corrupt leaders became the head of the people. People like Jesse Jackson, you ever heard of him? This guy called himself a reverend. He cheated on his wife, made a baby in that relationship. He took his then girlfriend to the White House under the pretense of counseling Bill Clinton, who had cheated on his wife. And I believe they gave each other the high five, you know, like right on brother, I did it too kind of deal. And this guy has managed over the last 50 years or so to build a career by using racism, dividing the people and conquering. The unfortunate thing about it is that he can walk into the average black church today, and rather than repudiating him, he gets a standing ovation. And that's how bad the situation is in the black community. And not all, but most, of course. So the government came in, the so-called black leaders became the head of the people, and most of the black preachers as well. And I have to tell you that most of these black preachers are not called by God, but by their mama. They're of their father, the devil. They're racist. They're not on the side of good. And that's why you don't see the black community, another reason you don't see the black community getting better for the most part. Everybody and their mama go to church, but yet they're getting worse instead of getting better. A quick example of some things that happened as a result of the government coming in. Prior to the government coming in, less than 10% of black children were born out of wedlock. It was an embarrassment to the family to have a baby out of wedlock. I remember when I first started dating as a teenager, my worst nightmare was to make a baby out of wedlock because I knew I would have to get married, even if it was a shotgun wedding. So I did not do it. But now, because the government is there and the fathers are not there, you have 70% of black babies born out of wedlock nationwide. And there's no shame about it. You don't hear the one complaining about it. because the government is taking care of the mother and the children. The man has no responsibility anymore. And by the way, when they took the man out of the home, they broke that spiritual order. There is a spiritual order to life, whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not, whether we deal with it or not. And that order is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children. And it's not an ego trip. There's no competition between men and women in that order. But when they took the man out, they broke that spiritual order, and the government became the daddy. And as you know, the government is anti-God, anti-family, anti-country, anti-anything that's good. Another example of taking the fathers out in the government as socialism is that you have abortion. Since the early 70s, over 16 million black babies have been aborted since the early 70s. Every day, over 1,400 black babies are aborted, 40,000 black babies a month. 70% of Planned, and this is according to the Census Bureau, 70% of Planned Parenthood abortion mills are found in the inner cities around the country. And yet, you can't get the black preachers or the so-called black politicians to do anything about it. And the reason that they won't is because they want black Americans demoralized, brainwashed, and dumbed down. Because in that condition, they can use them for their own personal gain. They can go to the government and say, hey, we need money for this program and that program and, you know, out of wedlock birth. And when the government gives that money, it ends up in the pockets of the so-called leaders and the black preachers. It never goes down to the people. So they want them brainwashed. We've gone out to try to get these churches to get involved with the abortion issue, and they say, oh no, it's not mine. Who am I to judge? A woman has a choice. She has the right to kill her own baby. And that's the mentality. That is socialism at work. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. I don't know of any woman who had an abortion while growing up. And I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. I remember for colors only signs, for whites only signs. I went to a movie theater once when I was a teenager, and we had, the black people had to sit in the balcony. And white folks sat downstairs. We were not allowed to sit with them, but that was okay with me because the seats in the balconies were better anyway. I'm like, wow, this is cool. But I have to honestly tell you, I used to pick cotton. Anybody ever pick cotton? Good. You have not lived until you pick some cotton. It builds character, believe me. But not one time did I hear my grandparents or my parents say that we should hate white Americans. They said that if you do the right thing, you love what's right, you work hard, you treat people the way you would like to be treated, you can make it in this country.
That's right.
And it wasn't. It wasn't until the civil rights movement started that things became, for the lack of a better word, screwed up. And I want you to know that this is a spiritual battle. One other example of socialism, in the state of Indiana, I mentioned out of wedlock birth. In the state of Indiana and Virginia, South Carolina, you have 80% of black babies born out of wedlock, just in those states alone. And you can't get, there's no outcry about it. There's no like, and if they mention it, they blame it on racism. Well, the white man made me do it. That's a lie. But they say that, and the reason that they can say it and get away with it, not all, but most black Americans are angry. They have been made to be angry at white Americans. When they elected Barack Obama, the election was about black racism and white guilt. White people thought, well, if we give black people a black president, then they would know that we're not racist against them. And I tried to warn you that that's not going to change the hearts and minds of most black Americans. Prior to Obama coming in, when President Bush was there, you had something like 35% of black Americans who thought that this country was a racist society. Now that Obama is there, over 55% of black Americans think that America is a racist society. It didn't change, it got worse.